Hi, my name is Matt. Welcome to Unbearable 73. Sometimes I have a more structured video that I'm going to do, or, you can maybe see I'm reading from a script that I want to, if I'm going to talk about something with information, I want to be properly sourced and have my thoughts structured, so I'm not wasting time on a video. But sometimes you can just find something you want to talk about and make a few points, and that's kind of what this is about. So I finally was able to see the Northman a couple days ago. I'm kind of homebound for medical reasons, so it took a while to make arrangements. So and I'll do a review of the film soon. I want to reread the Legend of Amleth from this, which is the history of the Danish people by Saxo Grammaticus. Which basically means Saxo the writer. I haven't read that book since I was 17 in high school, maybe 16. Anyway, so I'm not here to talk about the movie per se and how much I enjoyed it, which I did, or review it. I'm here to talk about this article. Okay, so this article is written by Sonny Newman. It's on Movieweb, and the title is How the Northman Drops Us into the Immorality of History. So, let's start with one point, right? To write an article where you're putting amorality on the table, you have to kind of understand what amorality is. Well, the way we use words in the English language, I'm being stupidly simple about this. If we take the A off of amorality, we have morality. So what does the A mean? It means the opposite of morality. So morality, depending on your particular legal or ethical or religious approach, is a set of rules that sapient beings, humans, use to guide our behaviors. They could be religiously based. The Ten Commandments, for example, that the Abrahamic religions use. They could be based on some other event. It's not, it's not about, how should we put it? It's not, again, your morality is your morality, which leads into this point. So to say something is amoral, you are talking about in respect to the morality you're basing that on, right? Now, this writer, Sonny Newman, clearly intends not to be doing that, but does it anyway. Meaning, you can read Sonny Newman's morality into the article when you see the points I'm going to go over and why this person is talking about something being amoral, meaning the writer is saying that is using amoral in the sense that there's no morality in history, which is an insult to people, okay? But in fact, even though they said they're trying to make that point, they're making points against events in this film based on their own morality, and I think that's a lack of self-awareness on when you're writing something. For example, I know I have certain moral points of view, and if I'm going to say something is amoral, I'm not going to say, I'm going to have to be consciously aware that not to have my own personal moral system creep into that. Now therefore, I wouldn't use the word amorality because it relates directly to morality. I know I just belabored that point, but you'll understand why when we talk more about this article. Okay, so, and to give you a brief on the Northman, the Northman was a film done by Robert Edgers. And it's based on the Legend of Amleth from the book I told you about. Okay, and the general plot, it's kind of a revenge story involving the gods and whatnot. I'm not going to go grossly, because I'll be making particular points. Okay, so let's. And again, I've read a lot about Norse mythology. I love it, especially as Tolkien's work. That got me into it originally. Also, one of my favorite comic book characters is the actual Marvel Thor, who ceased to exist about 10 or 15 years ago, and we know what they have in the comics now or in the movies now. But from the beginning through basically when JMS left Marvel, that was the end of Thor, basically. Except for one Mike Oeming's Ragnarok arc. Okay? So But the very first sentence, again, I'm not claiming to be a historian. I am or an expert in Viking culture or Viking mythology. I'm someone who enjoys it. I've read a lot about it, and I know enough about it to point certain things out. Okay? So the writer starts out with, it doesn't take a degree in history to realize most historical films are historically inaccurate. That sounds true. And then, whether the anachronisms are glaring or subtle, our celluloid visions of the past are filled with blunders and attitudes of the people making them in the present. Blunders and attitudes of people making it, like the person writing this article? So then there is one, like, it was a notable exception, Robert Edgars. And then he goes on to talk about Edgar, right? So, now, I can and will point out inaccuracies in the Northman. They're not glaring, they're not destroying the sensibility or whatever. But to give you one, Fjolnir seems to worship Freya. I can't quite catch it on the single watch I've done, which particular god he's worshiping. Freya, their sacrifice was almost always a boar. That's their traditional sacrifice to them. Yet Fjolnir is engaging in human sacrifice every time you see him sacrificing something, and Freya, from what we know, the historical practices required a boar to be sacrificed more than anything else. But it doesn't destroy the film. I'm just pointing out you could quibble over the accuracy of even this film and not take away from the enjoyment of it, right? So let's continue here, okay? So, and again, this article is fairly good. It's nothing, just a sort of standard discussion piece. And then we begin to get to the portrayal of violence. And it goes, it is made very clear early on in the Northman that we're not dealing with standardized images of Vikings in Norse mythology that show up in Hollywood hits like How to Train Your Dragon or Thor. I seem to remember in Thor in 2011, Thor murdering people like the giants left and right. He killed at least 50 of them in one scene. At least. That's not a violent film. Leaving aside the connection of comic Thor, which is which is loosely at best to, mythological religious Thor, okay? And yes, there are still people in the modern day who worship they practice the Old Norse religion. So you can't call their beliefs mythology unless you're going to call Christianity mythology. You got to be fair there, okay? But so right now we're dealing with someone. How to Train Your Dragon is an animated kids film, if I remember right. I never watched it, but it didn't interest me. But regardless of it, it's not intended to be, But Thor was a very violent film, okay? And if these are the only two films that this person knows of that have Vikings in it, did they miss the show Vikings? Did they miss The Last Kingdom? Did they miss a movie which I'm a big Lee Majors fan. He was in a movie called The Northman, which even though it was a little more romanticized, but it was violence and it was, but the Vikings exploring the New World and bad stuff happening, You can go on. The 13th Warrior, which is more historically accurate in some senses than this article. There have been Hamlet, which is loosely based on the tale of Hamlet. If I really wanted to be thorough, I can spend an hour talking about Viking films which show violence and show an interpretation of the culture that is not Thor or How to Train Your Dragon. Okay, so, and the Northman faces that brutality head on. Though Amleth is the son of a king, the king is clearly a violent man with rank that enables his cruelty. So let's start from a point right there. Boom. This is a moral judgment by this writer. Now, people who need to understand right now in the United States and Canada and most of Europe and Russia and even parts of China and Japan, all of Japan, but even parts of China. I'll criticize the People's Republic of China for being communist mother frackers because they're evil. Communism is evil. But the reality is, at least 50% of people in China live a state of living that's closer to us than anything our medieval ancestors around the world had. Okay, the modern world, in most of it, we're in a paradise compared to anything before the year 1900. There are diseases that would kill children in mass that now We just know how to we know how to properly clean a bassinet in a hospital, so they never even get them. Vaccinations stop diseases. People need to understand we live in a time that is devoid from the direct need to survive. How do we look at me? I'm not the most healthiest person, but I work for a living, and I know I need to get my weight on and all that. And I wouldn't survive in that world. I'd be dead. I wouldn't have lived to this age. Not even because of the weight, because of other medical conditions that prevented me from dealing with my weight. Most of us in the modern world have no concept of the degree of survival that people before the year 1900, going back for the 100,000 years or so before that, had to deal with. Yes, I had some crap in my life. Things as a kid I'm surprised didn't kill me, that people tried to do things to me and whatnot. Okay? That's not the point I'm making. There's a day-to-day survival nature that everyone in the world had to do before the sort of modern science and legal era to survive. Okay? And now you go to further extremes where basically Scandinavia, which is the northern part, a part of the part of Europe where the Germanic tribes moved up into and became the Nordic people, the Norse peoples, the Scandinavian peoples. That part of Europe, without modern technology, or technology the last 100, 20, 30 years, is very difficult to live in. Okay? You have long winters, the ground, this is before the science of agriculture became something that the ruling nobility would spread or invest money in. The land up there wasn't really... To farm in that area, you need agricultural science to keep the soil in better shape. You need to know your growing seasons. This isn't knowledge that the Vikings or many people in medieval areas around the world had. They were beginning to gain it and to accumulate it because a lot of the knowledge existed in the Roman times and in between in the era of the Roman Empire and the Republic and the ancient Chinese dynasties. And then something seemed to happen, I want to say between 600 and 800 AD worldwide, where what we call the Dark Ages occurred, and humanity seemed to have lost a large level of societal advance. There's been evidence that it might be due to a volcanic eruption causing Earth temperature to lower a couple degrees, which messed up crop yields for 50 or 60 years, and that caused die-offs and things like that. I mean, regardless of what caused it, it seemed to happen worldwide, and it caused a loss of knowledge and progress. For example, the Romans invented concrete. That's what the Colosseum is made of. That's what their aqueducts are made of. That knowledge was lost and for over 1,000 years because of the Dark Ages, until a guy in Britain in 1880-something, if I remember correct, analyzed the Roman cement, or whatever it was called, he called it, and figured and reverse engineered how to make it again. And then our modern world is built on concrete. It is probably, if you name the most important substance in the modern world, people don't realize it. It's concrete. If you just eliminate that invention, we don't have any of the modern buildings we have, which means hospitals go away, some of the domiciles will go away. Anyway, the point I'm getting at, there was a lot of knowledge lost. Our ancestors, especially in the Middle Ages around the world, had to do a lot to survive. So why have I been ranting about this? Okay. In Scandinavia, their life and their morality was based to a very high degree on survival. How they worshiped their gods reflected that. How they built their homes. Why they enslaved their fellows. Okay, and that's another thing. If you want to read a book about this, Thomas Sowell has a couple books that cover this, like The Untold Truth of Slavery. Prior to about the year 1600 or so, the vast majority of peoples were enslaved by their own people, by people who lived within a couple hundred miles of them. So the Vikings, the Scandinavians enslaved other Scandinavians, the English enslaved other English, and so forth. The Africans enslaved other Africans, and on and on. So they had a structure where they needed to do what to survive. So the violence in their world was not based on the modern. He's making a moral judgment, saying the writer, okay, when they say that the king is clearly a vile and violent man. Well, guess what? If you even watch the film, the way Edgar presents it, and read the Amulet, yeah, he was a vile and violent man. You know what? but he did that to help his people survive. Okay, he didn't come home and say and be violent just for the hell of it. He went out to war to gather resources for his people and to protect this territory that his people lived in. Okay, and yes, that is by modern standards horrible. You shouldn't need to go and rip off someone in another home or city or whatever just to get food. We should be able to provide, things like, I don't know, baby formula, in the stores so we can use the normal resources to get them. Okay, but in the world of the Vikings or the world of medieval Africa or the New World, these people had to do things to survive in the large groups they were, and a lot of it was retaliatory. In other words, these sort of practices probably developed when one group of people was being assaulted, had their resources taken, so they said, okay, the strongest guy, Haromir there, he's strong, and he just killed 3 of those guys trying to steal 2 of our women and 2 of our children and our food, so we'll do what he says because he seems to know what to do, and boom, 1,000 years later, you have a Viking society, So you can't make a judgment on someone being vile and violent like that sentence makes, okay? And then, and to qualify with a rank that enables his cruelty. He has the rank because he's capable of defending his people, and he does vile things to do it. Okay, you shouldn't have to do vile things. But how many presidents of the United States we have who've ordered assassinations? That's pretty vile when you think of ordering an assassination. Or the decision Harry Truman had to make with regard to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yeah, you would say it's pretty vile, but it prevented, millions of U.S. soldiers, many more millions of Allied soldiers, and tens of millions of Japanese people from being killed in a land invasion of Japan. I'm not going to talk about the nuclear army. The point is, don't delude yourself into thinking that our leaders don't have to perform vile acts or decisions in the modern era. Just like the thing is, in the old eras, they had to be hands-on with it. Now, the prime ministers and the presidents and the premiers have armies and minions to do all their vile work. Okay, we pay those people to do the vile work so we can live in our homes and do videos like this. Okay? So then it goes on, and it seems like the writer has their moral point out of the way. So he goes, that being said, there are no overt condemnations or odious senses of moral outrage. Eagers never gives us a mouthpiece to condemn more and beg that we give peace a chance. Nor did he challenge the necessity of the revenge quest that drives the narrative forward. This, the films tell us, is just how things were. Their moments are designed to be upsetting. The villagers burned alive in the boarded house as one of the movie's most haunting images, but never once does it tell us how to feel is truthful, not didactic. And I'm spoiling this from my review, okay? If you go back and look at that exact scene and Amlet's face and his body posture when he was standing in front of it, you have to realize Amlet was being raised from birth to be a protector of his people. That's what the whole ritual with the Ulfhirnar was. And I'll get into that later, if maybe. But he was standing in front of that vile act of burning the unnecessary, as we would in their cultural view, the people they couldn't put to work in some capacity as slaves or as sacrifices or be let to live because they would grow up in society that maybe want revenge. They said, we got to kill these people. Now, it's obviously, by modern standards, morally wrong. I'm not looking to cast a judgment. But this writer clearly is trying to point something out from their morality that this was wrong. Well, guess what? They're all dead. Okay, in a modern world, I wouldn't go over to my friend's house, take their food, and burn their family alive so they won't come back and steal my food. We don't need to do that. We passed that, okay? But this is survival. And this was just the way it was. But the point they missed in the scene is Amlet's reaction to that. He's staring at you, the audience, with the look on his face of, this is not what I envisioned my life to be. I should be someone protecting people from shit like this, not the one doing shit like this. Okay? What happened to Amleth drove him away from his home, what he was taught to be, and into this path. Okay? Now, let's keep going here. Amleth is not the romantic, tragic hero we will be presented with in a more straightforward epic. Again, missing the point of obviously this person never seen a lot of. Ever see Ironclad? Go watch that. Well, you know, I'm sure that's brutally violent in that film. It was awesome. Anyway, Amleth isn't embracing his own, and he's capable of compassion, even to certain tenderness. Yes, because he's a normal person. Okay, people people in the ancient world were genetically identical to us for the last 100,000 years. We have that same range of emotions and whatever. The difference is we can show this stuff more because we don't need to struggle as brutally to survive, which this writer clearly doesn't get. His is a brutal, merciless world. To survive his mission, you will need to be brutal and merciless. Finally, you think the writer seems to get it. And then, here's what I'm getting at, okay? Well, now, here's why, in a sense, I did this article. The portrayal of religion. Amleth is a compelling protagonist, but he's not exactly likable. He's brutish and tunnel-visioned, willing to do whatever it takes to avenge his father, save his mother, and kill his uncle. Even when the rebel is there's spoilers for the Northman in here, okay? Outright spoilers. So if you don't want to hear spoilers, then stop right here. Okay? When revelations, his uncle's loss of rank, his mother's background as a slave, emphasize this quest may be pointless. Again, no, not pointless. Okay? Because he doesn't understand that the Norse Germanic culture had entirely different morality. Okay? In that culture, you are born with a fate. The Norns, however, there's different variations of how the Norns do this depending on which subset it is. In some they weave it, in some they sew it, in some they grind it off of rocks, in some they throw the bones. But there's, your fate is decided at birth. Okay? That doesn't mean you have no free will. Okay? Your free will isn't how you embrace or face your fate. Okay? And that doesn't mean that Amleth was destined from his birth to be at this exact point, okay? Because everyone's fate is defined at birth. So when Amleth's father's fate, Orvandil's fate, was decided at his birth, that he would be murdered by his half-brother, that influences the creation of Amleth's fate, okay? You get what I'm saying? It's not a singular event. It's the flow of events defining a path for you through that reality. Doesn't mean you don't have free will. It just means you have to recognize your path that you're on, okay? And Amleth recognized his path from a young age. He had to avenge his father. He had to avenge, because his father was his father. He had a duty to him, and he had a duty to be the protector of his people. And this is something else that gets missed entirely by this writer and a lot of people. Folnir, by his own fate, which was to defeat Orvandil and therefore become the protector, failed completely as the protector was driven out of his home. So, if Folnir would have been fated to be a successful king, Amleth's fate would either have been to have killed a child or to not want revenge. You see the kind of, how there is free will and intersection, I hate using that word, how it works out, okay? So, Amleth's quest is not pointless. It's his fate. He has no choice to follow that path. Not that there's free will on that path, but that's just make it clear. It's the circumstances he was born in and was created by the people around him. The Norns can see the infinite future and the infinite past, and that's what the fate comes from. Okay? So, and to say it's against the interest of everyone involved, that's the next sentence. It didn't matter to him. He was told it was destiny to avenge his father, so the civil persons. It wasn't his destiny to avenge his father. It was his fate to follow that path to gain vengeance and justice and balance against Fjolnir. Okay. This analysis shows a complete lack of understanding of Viking culture and Viking spirituality and society. Just that alone. So, most audience members will come to the conclusion Amleth is not a good dude. If you don't think Amleth is a good dude, you're mentally defective. Okay? But good not in our modern sense, but Amleth could have just spent, after he was thrown out as a child, he could have been a vile, raping murderer for the rest of his life and just went around killing people for random hell of it. No. He knew at a certain point, he after the incident with those people, and reminded him of what he should have been doing, which was avenging his father, avenging the loss of protection from his people, avenging his bloodline. He knew In the Viking sense, he is a good man. He did what his fate called him to do, which involved justice on Folnir for destroying a kingdom, and therefore making it harder for the people to survive. Okay? Now, there's a little ambiguity in here, and I will criticize this more in my movie review, but early on, Edgar's kind of hems and haws of whether supernatural events are real, and then halfway through, they're clearly and obviously real. So that's a flaw in the film, that the writer here, no, we're supposed to accept the supernatural forces Amleth believes in are real. Well, we're shown that they're real. Very obviously shown that they're real. Okay? And as far as Amleth killing his half-brother, again, spoilers, okay, understand this. The child brought the fate on himself. Okay? He was put in a position by the circumstances where he was going to attack Amleth from behind, an Ulfhjónar. I'm not pronouncing that right, but there's a concept of a warrior called the Berserker, okay? And Berserker literally means bare-mantled warrior or bare-spirited or something like that. Well, those who follow wolves are Ulfhjónar, which means wolf-mantled warrior. And they also follow Odin, but Amleth is one of them. And when you attack a warrior like that, who fights in a raged animalistic point of view, a feral point of view, you're going to die. You can't, that's just the reality of how that type of soldier was. And the person who put that boy there was Folnir, and Amleth's mother, the child was Gudrun, the mother is... No, the child was Thorir, Gudrun. The mother was Gudrun. I don't, the second son's name just escapes me at this point. I've only watched it once. So the point of watching this, when you have a tale set in the Viking time, the Viking morality, they're not preaching this is how you should be. They're saying this is how it is. And if you understand the mental acceptance that was the way the society worked, you understand this film a lot better. Okay. Now, to the last point, the Valkyrie at the end, and this is some people's misconceptions, okay, about Odin, among other things. A lot of the modern conceptions of Odin tend to come from the comic book depictions of him, rather than the actual sagas. Although there is some of reference to a bit of, anyway, don't want to get lost in a real movie, okay? Amleth didn't go to Valhalla, the Hall of Odin, because he was a hero. Amleth went to Valhalla because he was a brutal and effective motherfracker. Okay, Odin's name literally means the fury of battle, the ecstasy of battle. Okay, he's a war god, but he's not the war god you want to call on unless nothing else is left. Okay, when Odin comes to the battlefield, he fights in a berserk fury. And not only will the enemy die, but any allies near him, like the child Amleth killed, are going to be killed. You don't call upon Odin in battle as a standard thing. He's a last resort war god, and that's on purpose. Odin worship is, I'll fight in battle for you, but there are consequences. Don't have these wars. They're destructive. Learn to live in peace. Anyway, there's a tale. There was a tale of Eric the Red or something. No, that Eric was someone else. But anyway, a Danish king, Odin welcomed him into Valhalla in another tale. Basically said, "Look, you're coming to Valhalla because you were a brutal and effective killer. And why did he brutal and effective? Because he axe murdered his entire family and other people to become a king." And Odin was impressed by that. Okay. Now, why did Odin accept that type of warrior into Valhalla? Because Odin's preparing an army to fight in Ragnarok. Okay, Odin's Hall is about preparing for Ragnarok, an army to fight in Ragnarok. Okay? So, Amleth will see his family because all the halls of the gods, each of them has a hall, are in Asgard, or in Hela's case, in Hell. But so they can. It's the same as the real world, just in the spiritual plane. Okay, so they will see his family in the afterlife, but going to Odin's Hall is not a sign of being a hero, going to Thor's Hall or Tyr's Hall are signs of being a hero, but not Odin. Which again shows that this writer doesn't understand what they're trying to review here. Okay. And then here, and this is summed up that there, when the unsparing violence of the film undercuts Amleth's heroism in the audience eyes, the reality of his religious justification suggests he is a hero. Together, these approaches to the material create an uncomfortable ambiguity. Is Amleth the product of the culture of conquest and meaningless violence, or is he the brave beholder of noble quest? So right there is a moral judgment on the culture of the Scandinavian people of the medieval and earlier times. The Viking Age is technically the Iron Age of Scandinavia, not the medieval time, but this is what these people and all other ancestors around the world had to do to survive. There's no moral judgment about this. There wasn't. Yeah, there's meaningless violence everywhere, but the cultures weren't built to be meaninglessly violent and pointless conquest. They were built around having those groups of people survive. And this writer clearly doesn't understand that, and therefore doesn't understand what was going on in this film. Now, the rest of this is kind of talking about stuff. I think I made most of my point, okay? And all I want to say is, here, we'll go back here, okay? Again, spoilers. When Amleth kills his uncle, a fight that returns us to destruction of lava, the fatal blow to his enemy coincides with a fatal blow to himself. That's not what happened in that scene. And people need to understand fate to understand that scene. Again, total freaking spoilers to this, to the Northman, okay? Amleth lost the fight. If you watch the fight, you understand that. Folnir beat him. And he only beat him because Amleth was tired and burnt out as hell, and Folnir was basically fresh. Otherwise, Folnir would have just lost, okay? But when Amleth lost, Folnir looked at Amleth and realized, one, he probably wouldn't be walking out of an erupting volcano anyway, but he had no reason left to live. His entire thing, everything he had tried to do in his life led him to a point where he had nothing left. And so he basically waited to Amleth, gathered his energy, and they killed each other. It was, okay? And you can make an argument about, was Fjolnir following his fate, or was he denying it? Because Amleth's fate was to kill him, to avenge his father. So therefore, was Fjolnir's fate to be the recipient of that? And if so, then that's why that scene occurred. Okay? It's very important to understand the nuances, and I will talk about it more in my review. I don't want to bog this down with the review. I'm pointing out that textually this matches, I'm going back to the article, textually this matches the usual tenets of revenge. No! This is just... Okay, I want to calm down. So I want to finish. I don't want to. This has already been going on for half an hour. I want to. You should read the article and yourself, because there's a lot of other stuff I can pick out in here. The point. So all I'm going to say now is, when you, to some people like Sonny Newman or people like me, if you want to make some points about this, and every point I said about historical realities, I can find source documentation to show that. Okay, and I've said when I'm not being 100% clear at times. You know, if you're gonna be Sonny Newman or anyone else who decides to make a subconscious hit piece on a film, because that's what this was, okay, you really should A, understand your own intrinsic biases, and B, do some research. I'm Matt. This has been Untitled 73. Thank you for listening. Hopefully I didn't drive you away after the first 10 minutes. Sorry if I'm sounding a little stuffy. My allergies exploded like a bomb today. I feel like ultra, you know how it goes. So, thanks. Like if you like, dislike if you dislike. Share this video if you please, and subscribe if you want to hear more from me. Thank you.